scream. Broken dreams in a digital stream. Fanfics wild with absurd delight. In this madness we take flight. Comic panels twisted in the dark. Videos that leave a mark. Cringy art that warps your mind. In this chaos we unwind. Sonic insanity, we laugh at the madness. Jump in the frenzy, ride on the badness. Sonic insanity, fans gonna ride. Crazy tales that never die.
Today we are going to be doing a proper Sonic Insanity. For the past few days we've just been reading fan fictions to ease into this. Today I wanted to do an actual crazy thing involving Sonic. So we're going to be looking at Nazi Sonic and figure out where it came from and how horrible it is. So, this article is titled, "Why Did a Nazi Sonic Appear in a Sega Magazine?" And we can see here the Nazi Sonic in question. It is captioned, "A right-wing Sonic blasts that small chap, actually. Can't read all that because it's cut off. And we can see a picture of Sonic, and the text on it says, Sega Power. Read it. Sega Power was an old magazine competing with Nintendo Power. And we see a thing pointing to Sonic and a thing pointing to Mario, because we wouldn't know who they are. Sonic says, he, as Sonic is known to do. And it says, this is Sega Power. Now, we can see that Sonic is holding what appears to be an old-style German rifle, but it could just be any rifle because it's a combination of multiple guns and is very poorly drawn. We can see that Mario has been blown to bits, and I want to say there's blood everywhere, but it kind of just looks like the red and blue of his outfit splattered everywhere, and Mario looks more like a robot that blew up than a human that's been shot. Because we see one eyeball go in one direction with little twisty bits, and then one eyeball go the other direction, and his nose and mustache come off as a whole. It's very cartoony, very goofy, but also horrendous because of the fact that Sonic, for some weird reason, is a Nazi. So, now onto the Sonic himself. We can see that this Sonic is half decently drawn. By that I mean, the head shape is fine, the body is fine, but other parts of him are not fine. I think that this has either been heavily referenced or traced from old Greg Martin Sonic artwork. And the reason why I say that is because we can see here that the arms and legs, which are not referenced, are horribly proportioned. You can see that it looks like he started to draw the arm bigger, but then changed his mind and made it smaller. And we can see that the arm is segmented into 3 weird parts and is super long and creepy looking. He almost reminds me of Chris Chan's arm in She Came for Quick. The other arm isn't that bad, but mainly because it's obscured and you can't really see it. Sonic's nose is way too fat, and it looks like it was even fatter, but he tried to play it off like he drew a shadow on the nose. But it doesn't actually look like a shadow on the nose, it just looks like covering up for extremely bad artwork. And his legs, they're not bent at an angle like he wants them to be, it just looks like he has 2 tiny stubby legs. And his socks and shoes, they're just triangles. There's no depth to them, no idea what's going on. So this artwork is horrendous, offensive, and poorly drawn. It is somehow a triple threat of an artwork. And overall, I would just say that the biggest thing about this artwork is the fact that for some reason he's a Nazi, and for some reason Sega Power thought that it was okay to put this in a magazine. So let's get on to the article part of this. Seeing an image of Sonic the Hedgehog as a Nazi wouldn't make anyone blink in the year 2022, which was 2 years ago at the time of recording. I've been looking at the internet for too long to be shocked by fascist imagery or weird fan art of Sega's beloved mascot. Weirdly enough, there isn't too much fascist Sonic artwork. A lot of Sonic's fans are extremely liberal, to the point where there's quite a big SJW movement with Sonic the Hedgehog. People trying to use Sonic the Hedgehog to promote a lot of leftist things like BLM and Pride Month and stuff. That is just totally normal for Sonic, and a lot of people get in SJW fights all the time with this character. In a way, the marriage of the two is inevitable. A kind of Rule 34 without the sex. There are other rules to the internet besides Rule 34, but your porn-rotted mind can't let you understand that. Though you can find a sexy picture of Nazi Sonic as well if you looked. I know what you jack it to. I don't know why you'd ever be looking that up, let alone admitting it in this. Google image search Nazi Sonic. I pray that you guys don't do that. Don't ruin your search results. And see the images yourself. There he is photoshopped on Hitler's body, with his friend Tails saluting the Nazi flag. This guy's a coward and he did not include that in the article, or else we'd be seeing it right now. One of these images is not like the rest, however. It's a moderately viral tweet from October 29th, 2020, showing a lovingly hand-drawn Sonic with a swastika armband and a rifle, seemingly blowing up Mario, his rival mascot from Nintendo to bits. But unlike the other detritus, the Google search turns up. This is one that contrasts has a childish charm. And I do agree with that. It does have a childish charm to just how terrible the artwork is. More interesting, however, is that the image was originally published in June 1992, which means that it's one of the earliest pieces of Sonic fan art, by the way, predating the weirdness of the Sonic fandom, of Sega Power magazine, devoted to the video game company and its games, and the fandom around it. How in the world, any reasonable reader today might ask, did a popular gaming magazine publish Sonic Nazi fan art? To understand this image, we must first understand the historical context. You're making me feel ancient by speaking about it that way. 1992 was not that long ago. The Cold War had ended, and the console war was heating up. It was the fourth generation, or 16-bit era of consoles. The Super Nintendo Entertainment System, SNES, had been on market for 2 years, and the Genesis for a couple more. It came out in the 80s. The Nintendo Entertainment System had completely dominated the previous generation, and is widely considered to have pulled the video game industry out of the 1983's video game crash. Only in America, really. The crash was mainly an American thing. The industry was completely fine in Japan. In 1992, Nintendo's position was less dominant. The Genesis launched at a lower price because it had been around longer, and consistently outsold the SNES during the Christmas shopping season. The Genesis had slick, black, edgier look, and the marketing to match. Genesis does what Nintendo don't, as the famous ad said. Key to this edginess was Sonic, who differentiated from Nintendo's lovable goofball Mario by taking on a kind of routine attitude, which is something that's kind of forgotten about with Sonic today. A lot of people think of Sonic just as a generic mascot, and classic Sonic is just a cute, kawaii chibi mascot, when Sonic actually was edgy and was like super counterculture for his time. If you let him idle for a bit in the game, he'd break the fourth wall, look at the camera and start tapping his foot, urging you to get on with it. Over the years, these mascots became the avatars for the console wars, which was why PlayStation launched with an ad of Crash Bandicoot in front of Nintendo's headquarters, calling Mario a plumber boy. Sega had a lot of those ads too. This intense rivalry and brand affiliation as gamer identity largely defined mainstream gaming culture when Sega Power was published that in 1992 issue. Back then, magazines like Nintendo Power published fan art in their reader letter sections, and it's no surprise that in June 1992, issue of Sega Power includes a lot of anti-Nintendo drawings. There's a short comic where Shinobi cuts off Mario's stomach with a sword to help him lose some weight. And let's take a look at this lovingly drawn comic. I need to lose some weight. You're right about that, you fat shit. And shit is censored, thank God, my Christian eyes. And it's labeled as Shinobi. And then Mario is backing up in horror as Shinobi leaps, saying, "We'll need to get rid of this flab, hiya!" And then we see Mario bleeding out on the ground, his ribs exposed, the fat blob next to him. Ha ha ha, who needs diet? This is the type of stuff Chris Chan would draw. I miss this pre-ironic phase of society. I want to go back to where people were cringe, because they didn't know people would make fun of them later. One of Sonic punching Mario's face in, and this is actually really well drawn. I like this Sonic here a whole lot. It's heavily referenced from the basic ass Sonic image, but it's really good, and it's really good to see someone draw a Japanese style Sonic back then. With Mario, I think he's very well drawn too. His face getting punched in looks a little weird, and the mushroom face is very strange, but I like the artwork overall, a lot better than the Nazi Sonic art or the other artwork. Another revealing that Mario is bald underneath his iconic hat. Question: why does Mario always wear a hat? Mario with a hat, Mario without a hat, slaphead plumber. And then another one says, is he the professor's long lost son? I don't know who the professor is, but he's like Sonny Boy, and then Mario's like Papa. Very weird. One practically morbid fan art depicts Mario with a noose around his neck, and while Sonic shoots him with a pistol, and Luigi's decapitated head in the background by Alex Kidd. So it's funny that Alex Kidd, of all irrelevant characters, would be the one to kill Luigi, but we see that yet again Sega Power kicks butt. Mario, Sonic, Luigi, Alex Kidd, and they even killed a mushroom. So the mushroom is the one that got shot, not Mario. Mario didn't get shot, it was the mushroom. And we see Sonic has also stepped on Threadworm, Snake Rattle It Roll. There's some weird thing called Andy, and then, oh, or is he Andy? Oh, he's Andy and he's holding up a fist? I don't know who Andy is, he's probably someone. Something's labeled Neil? Is Neil the... I don't know. The smell of fear, so Mario either farted or shit his pants at this scenario. And I guess Mario is both being hung and maybe shot and killed with a scythe like Luigi. Really messed up and morbid. I think one of the worst fates ever is being killed by Alex Kidd. And that looks less like a noose and more like a bindi straw hanging Mario. The image of Nazi Sonic is slightly less shocking when nested among these images above. Not really. Nazi Sonic will always be a stranger sight than Sonic killing something, but it's still pretty bad. A note from the editor alongside these image reads, a right-wing Sonic blasts the small chap who wears an M on his hat to Kingdom Come. The artist, none other than Alex Beardshow from Sheffield. I don't know where the fuck that is. Andy Smith, the editor of Sega Power at the time, told me that the issue was in fact published during the height of Nintendo vs. Sega wars in the UK. Oh, so this is British. It's probably more offensive over there. That's crazy. And the magazine published fan art as a way of connecting with the readers. For some of those readers, kids, he assumed, seeing their art in the magazine meant the world to them. Oh yeah, that Nazi child is fucking happy right now. As this particular image, the armband was not considered to be a big issue back in those days. Yes, it was. Pokemon was being heavily censored because of something that happened to resemble a swastika. This was a big issue in the US. This wouldn't have gone by in the US, especially in a post-Columbine world, but I think this is still before Columbine, but still. It's been offensive. No one in the US would be okay with this. You only got away with it because you were in England, which now it wouldn't be okay. You would be in even more trouble for doing it now. You'd probably get arrested for making that now. The whole idea of this particular sketch is to show Sonic, Sega blowing away Mario. But you still put a Nazi symbol on him for no reason. In Smith's opinion, the Nazi armband was just a way to convey that Sonic was a ruthless force to be reckoned with. No, I disagree. I disagree heavily. Maybe that's my naivete, but I don't think anyone, certainly not me as the editor at the time, thought that it was outrageous and that shouldn't be printed. You should have thought that. We also tagged the image as right-wing in the caption, which I hope would give people the idea that we didn't approve of the right-wing extremism. No, it doesn't give that idea. It just makes it known that you know that it is offensive and that it isn't okay. But whatever. But I doubt anyone ever noticed that. Well, people did now, for sure. More than anything, Smith regrets Dan Crap Corner, a part of the letters section where Sega Power shared the worst fan art it got mailed by. Naturally, I thought that I was being hilarious, and thankfully someone with more sense than me told me I was being insensitive. You were just completely stupid. I'm shocked that you were able to keep this job at all, Smith said. The name was dropped and simply called Sega Power Gallery after a few issues. So the thing that was put up that he said was a positive thing was originally made to make fun of art, and then they still put Nazi art in it. What a ridiculous scenario. Only the Brits can get into a situation like this, but it still haunts me, and I'm deeply sorry for my callous actions and unintentional pain I may have caused to anyone who ever had a picture of theirs featured in Dan's Crap Corner. I was unable to reach Dan for comment. Dan's Crap Corner. Boy, do we get some naff pictures sent in, stupid Brits. No offense, but you've got to be seriously balking to draw some of this stuff. I mean, did you guys really try being this bad, or does it come naturally? Oh dear. And obviously a child's fan art drawn by a little kid, still leagues better than the Nazi artwork, honestly. And Dan, you're no looker yourself. Maybe I want to see what you draw, Dan. You already look fucking gross. Maybe your artwork isn't much better than this. Dan's Crap Corner is basically the equivalent of abusive father hanging your bad drawing up on the fridge. It's hard to imagine that Smith or anyone else at Sega Power intended to do harm when they printed the Nazi image. Yeah, but they shouldn't be that stupid. They shouldn't be that stupid to do that. But naivety is probably the right way to describe this decision. No, I don't think it is. I think it was just complete thoughtlessness, complete idiocy, complete fucking stupidity. It was hard to imagine back in 1992. I was born in 1996. I remember bits of the 90s. I remember the early 2000s. The early 2000s were edgier than the 90s. No. No. This wouldn't get published in any sensible magazine. But the gamer identity manufactured by marketing campaigns, defined by rejection of others, be they fans of competing consoles or women entirely, ha ha ha, had dire consequences. The idea that one console is inherently better than the other evolved into the idea that there's a superior type of player, the master race of players, you could say, or the right way to play, or like a video game. As we can see in early 1992, this quickly evolved into the rivalry of jokes about violence. 2 decades later, some of the people who were steeped in this culture of marketing went on to develop similar but more hateful views on inclusion in the form of Gamergate. Oh wow, we're getting Gamergate brought up in 2002? This is before Gamergate 2. People were rejected and threatened with violence, not just for what kind of games they liked, but what consoles they played on, but their race and or gender. I mean, I think putting Nazi artwork is worse than those things. Like, getting made fun of for your race or gender is still somehow less terrible than making Nazi art. On one hand, labeling the image of Nazi Sonic as right-wing seems to minimalize the fascist, racist worldview, but on the other hand, it's also clear about what right-wing politics were and are. So you only like the label because you can pin all right-wingers as being Nazis. How fucked up are you? I'm not shocked that you're writing this article. You just literally took this horrible thing and used it as a way to attack people on the right? You're fucking ridiculous. You're the one who has the lunacy. You and the artist of Nazi Sonic also felt that calling him right-wing Sonic was enough of a disclaimer to avoid accusations of endorsing Nazi fan art. Reactionary politics would spend the next couple of decades obscuring their movements, racism, and fascism, and by the time they burst into the mainstream of gaming culture with Gamergate. Yeah, we all know Gamergate was literally formed by Nazis. Hitler himself rose from the grave and started Gamergate. He saw what was happening to video games, and he knew it just couldn't stand. He had to actually rise from his grave and attack all of the SJWs. They've been successful enough that took months or years before the movement was wildly recognized as a home for extremist ideologies. Imagine being hung up on Gamergate a decade later. You're insane. If publishing the image was insensitive and not woke by today's standards, the caption was at least not hand-wringing about whether it was being unfair to right-wingers when it called them Nazis. I think that it was just artwork of Sonic being a Nazi, and the guy who published it wanted to kind of just excuse that it was a Nazi by having that caption. I think you're reading too much into it. And I think that you are crazy, completely out of touch with society, and a giant crybaby. That's what I think. And I think that alluding to everyone you not liking being Nazis makes you a petulant child. Did a 1992 Nazi Sonic fan art predict all of that? No. No. Probably not, but the gaming culture eventually caught up with the worst of what you could see in that image today. And that is everything. That is all of this article. I think I gave all of my opinions on it. I didn't expect it to go the way that it did, where I would be so annoyed at the end. But I guess Sonic and Sandy is always a surprise. The Brits have ruined everything once again. So that was the backstory and the examination of Nazi Sonic. This was something that really existed, that was made by a real person, presumably a child, maybe a guy who just can't draw, and was actually put into a magazine, and then used over 20 years later by some weirdo to accuse everyone in Gamergate of being Nazis. This is the world we live in, everyone. You are all in the asylum, and the crazy people are running it, and there's nothing you can do to get out. This has been Sonic Insanity. If you guys like this video, hit the like button. If you guys really like it, share it around. And if you want to see more content like this, then you can subscribe. Thank you guys for watching, and bye.
Crazy scribbles on a pixel screen, broken dreams in a digital stream. Fanfics wild with absurd delight. In this madness we take flight. Comic panels twisted in the dark.